Oh, you damn right. Recruiting never stops, but the big recruiting weekends are about to start. For Texas, we've been telling you about them. June 6th, June 13, June 20. We're going to hit the first one today as we get ready for it. I'm Chad Hastings. That, of course, is Jason Sukamel of orangebloods.com. If you are not there, what are you waiting for? Get to Orange Bloods, get all the great content, all of the 321 article every week. That's there from Jason. We got rumor mills, truth and lies, the war rooms, all kinds of stuff. CDC and Kirk Bowles back and forth in Destin, Florida. All of that stuff is on orangebloods.com. You can go check that out. So get signed up for that today. Before we dig in to June 6th, coming up, of course, this weekend. This weekend is that first big one. Before we start getting into some of the names that are coming in, let's get you a little love for that sponsor, and that is Longhorn Wealth Management Group. You see John's picture down there. You're about to see another picture of John. There he is. And a little Longhorn love, because it's all about the Longhorns for John and his family, 6 siblings, and his wife, also UT grads. He is passionate about it. That's why the place is called Longhorn Wealth Management Group. They've been doing this for over 30 years. John wants to focus in for the Orange Bloods Live folks and give you the opportunity to get after your own financial future. Take advantage of a free 90-minute private consultation. You heard me right, a free 90-minute private consultation with John. You can learn how working with a certified financial planner can help you maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. 972-707-4900 or go to longhornwealth.net. John always sending along big hook'ems. He's following Texas, and he's still bragging about that SEC All Sports Trophy for the 24-25 school year. All those teams winning the SEC in their first year in the conference. Pretty darn impressive. Jason, speaking of impressive, going to have another impressive list of guys coming in. Now, we've been honest about it the whole time. June 13, next weekend, and June 20, the following weekend, might end up being even bigger in terms of some of these names, but there's certainly some big names coming in for June 6th, and we're going to just roll through the list as you know it right now. And again, we would advise people get on orangebloods.com, because tomorrow night will be the war room right before the visits, and then you got Friday and into the weekend. Jason will have all the content for you as these guys come to visit. So where do we start, Jason? What's the name that we start with, and have we discussed him on the recruiting hour?
Yeah, a couple things. This is the big first weekend for Texas. A lot of schools started in April, but last weekend, late May, was a big weekend for a lot of schools. Texas crams everything into June. So the 6th, the 13th, the 20th. We've seen some movement, Chad, on some guys. Guys maybe move from 1 week to the next. So, KJ Edwards moved he was the 13th, then the 6th, and now he's the 20th, I believe. So
let's start with a Longhorn commit, though. We've recently mentioned him because he hadn't been a commit that long, but Hayward Howard is going to be in this for this weekend as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The fairly recent Texas cornerback commitment out of Edna Carr in New Orleans. This will just be about solidifying that, and I don't think there's any reason to be concerned. When he came in for an unofficial visit, I believe it was in April, like mid-April. I mean, he came out of that visit speaking very highly of Texas, and then it was on May 9th that he gave Texas a commitment. So hasn't been committed that long, not even quite a month. So, it's be a good chance to get him back on campus, his family on campus, get him around the coaches, get him around some other recruits, some team members. You mentioned even another Texas commitment. So, with these committed guys, you treat them a little bit differently. Although I say that, Chad, I've always heard this saying from college coaches, like, you have to recruit out-of-state commitments as if they're uncommitted. Okay, because they're a little bit different than a guy that's right in your backyard. So, I expect Texas will still show Hayward Howard a lot of love and a lot of attention, but he is already committed, so a little bit different scenario there. I haven't heard from Hayward. Like, I'm looking, he doesn't have any other official. We had a Miami official visit he had scheduled. I don't think that one's going to happen. I need to follow up with Hayward to make sure, but he's pretty happy. He was pretty solid with his Texas commitment, so I don't think there's anything to be worried about. If there even is a little chance to be worried, Texas should be able to shut that down this weekend.
All right, Jason, let's get to some monster defensive linemen. Last week, we devoted just about the whole show to him. Certainly, we started with him. But if you're so good that you might be the best interior offensive lineman in the country and you might be the best interior defensive lineman in the country, sometimes you just end up as an athlete. And that's what happens with Lamar Brown. But he's coming in for this visit of all the big names. Maybe nobody bigger. I mean, you mentioned Bowman. Bowman's huge, but man, Lamar Brown, big name too.
Big name, big talent, big physical guy, big everything. So Lamar, number 25 player nationally at a University of Lab in Baton Rouge. So everybody says, oh, he's going to LSU. He's going to LSU. You know, we've talked about him at length, right? Including, like you said, pretty much our whole show last week was designated to him. Texas has really surged there with Alan Clark leading the charge. I mean, they've got a long-standing relationship that goes back to when Lamar was a middle schooler. Alan Clark's dad taught or coached him in basketball. He introduced Lamar to Alan Clark. He went to some of Alan Clark's camps. Alan Clark ends up giving him an early scholarship offer when he was at, gosh, was it Southern? Is that right, Chad? Where was he?
At Southern, correct.
Southern,
yes.
Okay. I was just like, give my small. He went to Southern. He was one of Lamar Brown's first two offers. Well, now Alan Clark is at Texas. That's opened some doors. Yep, this one's interesting because when I talked to Lamar Brown last week, and we talked about it on this show, I said, hey, man, I'm not saying Texas is a leader. I'm not saying that at all. But Texas is a legitimate threat in this thing based on my conversation with Lamar. And I mean, it just the vibe he gave off. I did talk to someone late last week who said, hey, don't buy into it too much. It's still going to be LSU. And I get it. He's from Baton Rouge. Apparently his mom wants him to stay close to home, but it's not like Austin's that far or even Texas A&M. Now, I was told, hey, he might commit to maybe A&M, but he's going to flip to LSU if he does, right? So, you know, I'm not trying to poo-poo this one. This is a big story, but I mean, I think Texas has a shot here because of that relationship with Allen Clark, okay? I think if you're going to have to win over mom in this one and say, hey, mama, it's okay if he leaves home and he goes 5 or 6 hours away from home. Well, she's going to have to really trust whoever his coach is going to be. Well, Alan Clark has years of building that trust. So, you know, maybe Texas can come in and work some magic here. We'll see. I expect it'll be a tremendous visit. Will it be enough to put them on equal footing with LSU and even A&M? You know, I don't know the answer to that. We'll have a better feel coming out of the weekend. But it is a big, big visit for Texas.
Man, and we talked about him too. If you get towards the end of the discussions and it's those three schools and you start having the NIL talk, like the real NIL talk, the what could Texas, LSU, and A&M really do? How badly do they want you? That could be great news for Lamar Brown and his family.
It is going to be great news for Lamar and his family.
Because I was trying to think, Jason, which one would I rather have chasing me at the very end? I could make an argument for Texas for obvious reasons, but man, to have that hometown school, if you could make the Tigers think you're not coming and just dare them to give you an offer at the very end to really make you think, that might not be too bad either.
And listen, man, I mean, LSU, we've seen it before when they've lost players to Alabama and people who are up in arms. But when if you potentially lose a kid from University Lab, which is right there on the LSU campus, if he goes to Texas or Texas A&M, so that may put a little extra pressure on LSU, like you said, to make this thing happen. If they have to dig a little deeper than even they want to, you know, we'll see. Again, we'll see how it all unfolds. But bottom line is Texas is in the race, which they really weren't about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. All right. Rolling through this June 6th group that's coming in this weekend. The first of the big 3 June weekends for Texas. Lamar Brown, the defensive lineman, or maybe offensive lineman, just badass athlete. He's coming in. Jason, I would make sure that I introduced him to this next guy, Jamarion Carlton. We've talked about him. The trip is shorter. This is Temple. This is the guy we've talked about over and over again. So remind everybody for Carlton and whatever family's coming in here, how many times? I would assume he's been to Texas a ton. Is that true? How many times has he been on campus? How special is this weekend for him and his family?
Yeah, his most recent was back in April. He came in for a scrimmage, and I know of 5 times for sure for recruiting events. Okay, he's probably come in for a game or something that we haven't logged, but he's come in for recruiting events like, you know, pool parties and those types of things 5 times. So, but still, that one's run a bit hot and cold. I mean, Texas was early on. I think, Chad, let me look at this. I still have my future cast in for Texas. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel great about that, but I mean, Texas has been, a front runner in this one. That was back in February. I put that in. So Texas has been a front runner in this one for a long time, but they kind of fell off and fell back for whatever reason. And we're really kind of in the second tier behind Texas A&M and LSU and even Baylor and Texas Tech. Well, now Texas is kind of reconnected. Alan Clark, again, we're going to bring that name up again, has kind of opened that door back up, got Texas back in it. He did schedule a Texas official visit for this weekend. Okay, that was a pretty new development because he wasn't planning on visiting Texas. This visit is still pretty new on the books. I talked to someone this week, and I thought this was interesting because right now I would probably handicap it that A&M is a team to beat. Okay, but I think Texas can move the needle in this one pretty quickly because Jamarian's always loved Texas. Like you said, he's been on campus a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe LSU might be a strong contender. One person I talked to late last week, Chad, said, I don't think so. They said, I think he stays in the state. Don't sleep on Baylor. Don't sleep on Texas Tech. This person agreed. A&M might be this biggest threat coming into this weekend with the Texas visit. But this person also agreed with me and said, hey, Texas has been such a strong player in this one for so long. I think they can recapture that momentum just like that. So coming out of this weekend, it's going to be really interesting to see, after I talk to Jamarian and other sources, hey, do we still feel like A&M might have the edge, or do we feel like Texas has climbed back into that driver's seat? I don't know the answer to that yet, but needless to say, big visit for the Rivals 100 edge defender out of Temple.
Yeah, and again, I also wonder, having Lamar Brown in, there's another big-time D tackle we're about to mention here in just a second that I wonder if that matters too. If he feels like that much big talent is in on the same weekend, does that help Texas out? But Jason, before we get to another big defensive star,
that smile on your face, I know exactly where you're going. Yeah,
we got to go to the hometown. We're going to Waxahachie, Texas for this one. Cohen Brown, the wide receiver out of Waxahachie, is going to make the trip down I-35. Is this his first time on campus?
I don't think it's his first time. I believe he came in, it was seriously like over a year ago.
Okay.
Or, early in the fall, maybe. So 9-10 months ago, he's come in for a game. He might even come in last summer, but that was long before he was really on the radar. He just got his Texas offer a few weeks ago. Okay. This is a guy who's really seen his stock blow up this spring. Like if I look, he was committed to USC for a bit. It was back in April 2nd, he committed to USC. A little more than a month later, he decommitted. But, USC is pretty new to the picture. Texas is new to the picture. Notre Dame is new to the picture. I mean, a lot of these big schools have really started coming into play here. He always had, some pretty decent offers, but the real attention and interest has really picked up this spring as schools have gone out and seen him. He's 6 foot, 180, which doesn't sound like too much, right? But he looks like a grown man, Chad. I saw him at the Rivals camp. I've seen him elsewhere. I mean, he is a well put together young student athlete, Cohen Brown is. So he's coming in this weekend to Texas. And then he has, let me make sure I get this right. Well, he just visited Utah last weekend. Then he goes to Notre Dame and Ole Miss. Okay. Right now, coming into this weekend, I think it's safe to say Notre Dame is the team to beat. So again, this is the first time he'll be visiting Texas with an offer. This will be the first time where he's been a true priority for the Texas staff when he's been on campus. So we'll see how this weekend, changes things, if it changes things. But even if Texas really does knock it out of the park, you still got to sweat out that Notre Dame visit the following weekend. Okay. So, and he's got a top 8. So I don't think Cohen's a guy that's looking to make a decision, late June or anything crazy like that. We'll see when he just actually wants to have a commitment ready. But right now, the way I'd handicap this one coming into this Texas visit is Notre Dame's in front, and then Texas is kind of, nipping at their heels maybe with a couple other schools.
Interesting. All right. So keep an eye on that. I definitely will keep my eye on that coming out of the hometown of Waxahachie. All right, Jason, back to the defensive side and a name that we have talked about, big D tackle, Dylan Berryman. I see him listed here as the number 10 D tackle in the country. He's coming in this weekend. A lot of beef up front on the defensive side coming to see Texas this week.
Yeah, and he's another Louisiana guy. So 2 defensive tackles coming in from Louisiana. Who knows? Maybe you don't put those guys in the same room because they get their own room. But I was gonna say maybe they bunk up and maybe say, hey guys, we bring both of you guys in and you can line up side by side and be our Louisiana connection or something. But Dylan's an interesting case. Okay, early on it was he's usually a pretty open book when I talk to him. Early on, it was Texas and Florida State. Those were his 2 front runners. Or I'm sorry, excuse me, Texas and Southern Cal, excuse me. Southern Cal kind of fell off the books. They're starting to fill up. He kind of cooled on them, maybe a little bit of vice versa. Well, now he's got Texas. He's got SMU. He's visited Mississippi State last week, but he did visit Purdue back in mid-May. Early May, I guess it's May 9th. Coming out of that Purdue visit, all the buzz was on Purdue, which is just a little bit odd, right? For a defensive tackle. Frankly, it's odd for anybody anywhere to be leaning towards Purdue over Texas, but especially a defensive tackle out of Louisiana. But he's got some connections there to the staff. Purdue is the team to beat. There's some thought that maybe Dylan's, even if you like to believe in silent commitments, maybe he's a silent commitment, but he is still taking these other visits to see. So I don't buy this. If you're a silent commitment and you're taking other official visits, you're not a commitment in my book. Okay. You may be leaning somewhere, but you're not a commitment. So I think Texas has ground to make up in this one. And I know a lot of people have put their future casts in or crystal balls or RPM picks for Purdue. It makes sense. Okay. I get it. I understand. Listen, Dylan told me directly, Purdue is my leader. Okay. So, it makes sense to put it in. But as I always say, like sometimes in recruiting, you got to project not what he's saying now. What's he going to be saying 2-3 weeks from now? With this Texas visit, if Texas really pushes the right buttons, I still think there's a really good chance Texas overtakes Purdue for that top spot. But coming in this weekend, it is Purdue out in front. So again, man, a lot of moving parts in these things. It's going to be really interesting Sunday as I'm working the phones and I'm at the airport and doing everything else I need to do to kind of see how these reports are coming out of the weekend, because they might look a lot different on Sunday than they do before these guys arrive to Austin.
All right, we got 6 more names to talk about, guys that are going to be visiting this weekend, that June 6th, first big weekend for Texas in June in terms of the visits. Before we do it, let's thank a couple of our great partners. One of them is Specs. Here's Lisa.
Texans know for selection and lower prices, it all starts at Specs. Shop Specs! No matter what's on the menu, we've got you covered. With all your favorites on tap, you'll bring home the win. Shop Specs! Special occasion? Flirt responsibly. Boots on, drinks up. The fun starts here.
Shop Specs, low priced, amazing. Here's to you.
Shout out to Specs, and also a shout out to Longhorn Wealth Management Group. They are our title sponsor for the Recruiting Hour, and we told you about John. We were just talking about the Dallas area, my hometown of Waxahachie. John's not from Waxahachie, but he was 15 years as a board member of the Dallas, Texas Exes chapter. Now he's helping lead the build out up there in Collin County of the Texas Exes chapter. So if you live in Collin County, feel free to reach out to John. He can get you on that Collin County Texas Exes email list for upcoming events. And again, John wants to get you guys a free 90-minute private consultation to let them know what they do at Longhorn Wealth Management Group. You can learn how working with a certified financial planner like John can help you continue to build and manage your own financial successes, and to discover how you can truly maximize your wealth, minimize your taxes, and ensure your legacy. That free 90-minute consultation is yours. You just call them at 972-707-4900 or go to longhornwealth.net and you can get it done that way. Shout out to Longhorn Wealth Management Group and their great partnership. All right, Jason, 6 names to go. And, I like to keep up with the guys that have ratings that are up there in that top 10 in the country. Let's get back to the number 1 running back, according to Rivals in America. I don't see any other running back on this list, the list for this weekend, except is Xavier Crowell. What are the chances that Texas can talk let me see if I get it right, an Alabama kid out of Alabama?
Not good. It's happened before, so I wouldn't completely rule it out. And remember, we do have all-purpose back rankings too. So technically, he's the number 1 traditional back. But if you factor in all-purpose backs, there's at least one guy ahead of him. But he is number 41 nationally. He's a guy that reclassified into this 2026 class. So did Mark Bowman. I think of the guys we've talked about, I think he's the only other one that has. Obviously guys like Booby Feaster, but this one's going to be tough. He's visited Texas a couple times. He does really like Texas. So I'm not saying he doesn't have a genuine interest for Texas. He came in for a multi-day visit in the spring. He visited for a game last fall. Obviously he's coming in this weekend for an official visit, but it's going to be tough to get him away from Alabama and even Auburn. He's got Texas, and then it's he had Georgia, this last weekend, then Texas, then he goes Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, getting the last 2 visits. It's going to be awfully tough, Chad. I think Alabama is the clear leader here, probably Auburn second. Maybe you could make a case for Texas running third, but I think it's a pretty good drop-off from first to second, and then again from second to third.
Yeah, Longhorns with some work to do there on Xavier Crowell. He is coming in for this June 6th weekend. All right, there will be some specialists to discuss. Jason, for those that love their special teams and are wondering if there might be a punter in this class coming up, this is a great name too. How about Mikey Bukowskis? What do we need to know?
Yeah, well, first off, kudos to you, because these guys in the Rivals database are just listed as specialists. I wish we could list them as a punter or a place kicker or a deep snapper or whatever, but they're just specialists. And sometimes even I'm like, wait, which one's the punter and which one's the place kicker? Because I get them mixed up. But Mikey is a punter out of Prosper. Texas offered him a few weeks ago, and he had interest from schools like Arkansas, Missouri. I tell you, a lot of SEC programs had shown him interest, but USC, SMU. But Texas is his first big offer. I talked to him like the day after he got that offer. Let me see. That was May 12th. He got that offer. So it's been, a few weeks now almost, but it was pretty clear which way this one was heading, Chad. So he told me then he didn't want to commit before he took an official visit. He wanted to see things up close and personal in first person. I don't think he comes out of this weekend uncommitted. So I'll just say this. I'll have a commitment story written and ready to go. I probably should have done that a couple weeks ago. But, I think Mikey is a good shot that he winds up joining the commitment list this weekend. That would give Texas its punter, because they don't have much at punter right now. I mean, the Michael Kern transferred. Obviously, they brought in the transfer. So if they can get a young punter that can be a 3-4 year guy for you, that's actually a nice win for Texas, a nice take. So Mikey Bukowskis, if I'm saying, he'll be coming in this weekend. I feel really good about Texas locking that one up this weekend.
Yeah, because Bo Meester is just in for 2025. Does he just have the 1 year of eligibility? Isn't that right?
And I don't have the name in front of me, but I remember when I talked to Mikey, there is a kind of a preferred walk-on guy he would be competing with, but he'll have his chance, even possibly would have his chance, assuming he commits to Texas. Literally, as a true freshman, he could be a true freshman starter. That didn't work out with Michael Kern, but maybe they have better luck this time.
All right, Jason, help me out. I know you've said the word Prosper before. Zayden Crimpin, is he from Prosper? Yep. Is that who I'm thinking of?
Yep.
Okay, look at that. All right, shout out to Prosper. So maybe Mr. Crimpin and Mr. Bukowskis can talk a little bit.
I haven't asked Zayden about that. That's a good question. I need to talk to Zayden and see what he has to say about that. So.
Yeah, maybe they end up at the same place. Who knows? All right, so there's something on the specialist side of things. We'll hit that again a couple times. But before we do it, let's go back defensive, Jason, with, all these wonderful names. Bo Jandrew. Is that fair?
Close enough. I say Jeandro, but
Oh, no. Oh, you got it then. Let's put a little something on it. Yeah, Jeandro. Let's do it.
we'll split maybe somewhere in the middle of our pronunciations. But you know, he's an interesting guy because Texas offered him. Let me get this date right, Chad. It was very recently. Okay, so Texas offered him on May 12th.
Okay,
I think it was the next day. His twin brother, who's a safety, committed to Oklahoma. Right. Wow. So everybody's like, oh, then Bo is going to join his brother at Oklahoma. Makes sense. I mean, I'm predicting the same thing as well. But he said, hey, I want to slow this down a little bit. I want to, see what God tells me to do. And he's going to take other visits. So he's got Texas this weekend. He's got Oregon on June 13th. And then he does have Oklahoma on the 20th. I mean, listen, man, I think this thing will wind up going Oklahoma's direction. It'd be pretty interesting if it didn't. But I mean, the fact that he is taking his time, taking these other visits, he said, hey, I'm trying to keep an open mind. I'm not just going to go somewhere because my brother is. It'd make for a pretty fascinating story. Like somebody write a script and make a movie of it. If one of them goes to Oklahoma, one goes to Texas, right? Twin brothers, like that'd be pretty badass. And somewhere down the road.
And what's you said a linebacker and safety for the brother?
Yeah, brothers of safety, correct. They're out of Arizona. So Chandler Hamilton, big major power out in the Phoenix area. So no real ties to either Texas or Oklahoma, although both schools recruit that school pretty heavily. I mean, most schools in the country recruit Chandler Hamilton pretty heavily. But yeah, I got to think it'll be Oklahoma in the end. But he is trying to keep an open mind, and it'll be a pretty fascinating development if Texas does take a big step forward in this one this weekend. He's an out-of-state guy, so he's one of these guys I can usually talk to at the airport before he flies out. So that'll be my goal this weekend, to talk to Bo and a few of these out-of-state guys at the airport on Sunday.
Maybe like a Landon and Lance Jackson thing, except it's twins and it's Red River instead of Texas, Arkansas. Everything's cranked up a little bit. That'd be nice. I like that.
One thing that'd be cooler is like an offensive tackle and a defensive end or something, right? Where they'd like literally line up against each other.
Right. You're right. Much like the Jackson brothers, it's the same side of the ball. So they're never going to be on the field at the same time. And again, Jeandreau, Jandreau is that last name. Bo Jeandreau. Let's make it rhyme too. I don't know if that's right. Bo Jeandreau, come on. Let's do it. All right. So that's the linebacker. Now, Jason, let's get to another one of the Texas commits. The other one that'll be in town is a recent commit, also a specialist, Trot O'Neill. God, I hope this guy turns into a badass deep snapper, because that's a great name for a deep snapper. Trot O'Neill is coming in this weekend. Any suspense or drama for you when it comes to Trot O'Neill?
None. Trot looks like a linebacker. I'll say that. He's a big kid, man. I've talked to him in person and got a couple pictures of him. 6'2", 235. So I mean, he's a big kid.
Yeah.
He's a guy Texas brought in. I think it was back in February. I remember freezing my butt off there. It was like a junior day. It was freezing cold. Trot came in. He then came in again for one of these Texas City Limits deals where they bring recruits in. They go out to scrimmage in April. And then hang out. So they brought him in again. So there was definitely some serious interest there. Jeff Banks went and watched him snap in practice. And it was funny. I asked Trot, I said, how does that work? Is he sitting there with his stopwatch? And Trot's like, yeah, that's exactly what he does. Jeff Banks sits there with the stopwatch and times him and stuff. And Texas offered him, and he turned around and committed pretty quickly after. They offered him on the that doesn't make sense. But I've got the commit before the offer, so that didn't make sense. But he ended up committing on May 2nd, but it didn't take him long. Once they offered him, he knew it was going down. In fact, he's the one who committed on Friday night. The following, I knew he was going to commit, and I kept waiting. Friday morning turned to Friday afternoon, and then Friday finally, like 7:00, Trot committed to Texas. So big deep snapper out of Plano Prestonwood Christian. He's locked in. He's coming in this weekend. It's over and done with. I don't expect any shenanigans there. Trot O'Neill will be your Longhorn deep snapper.
There you go. All right. As long as we're hitting some specialists, could it be the deep snapper and maybe a kicker for the future as well? Jake Collette, a kicker coming in for a visit. Obviously, if we're discussing it, it's got to be a big deal on some level. How big a deal is this kid?
He's out of Georgia.
Okay.
This is interesting because, you go to these different kicking camps. There's Chris Saylor. There's a Coles kicking camp, the kind of the big ones. He was, I'd say, down the list, like, I don't know, 30th or something. But he's a kicker and a punter. He's really good at both. Well, he went to a camp fairly recently. I think it was in Indianapolis maybe, or Indiana or somewhere, and just did exceptionally well. So then he now moved up to the number 2 ranked kicker prospect in the country by Coles Kicking Academy.
Okay.
Texas kind of got wind of that. They looked at his film. They didn't have to go visit him. They just looked at his film, and they did offer him a scholarship. This was May 24th, so very recently. Now, he's told me, hey, it looks really good for Texas. It may not make it till his official visit, Chad. So we're keeping an eye on this one, to even if it happens before the official visit. But these 3 specialists, I'd be shocked if all 3 of them, one of them's already in the Texas class. I'd be shocked if all 3 of them weren't in the Texas class at the latest by the end of this weekend. Jake Collette, maybe even before that.
Yeah, there you go. So you could end up Longhorn fans by the time we're done with this weekend. Kicker, punter, deep snapper. You could end up with all 3 of those. Keep your eyes peeled for that. All right. Looks like one more name we need to hit, Jason, and it is the commit I referenced earlier. But as I'm seeing it here, he's a Georgia Tech commit. Another cool name to finish with. Traevis, Traeviss. Traevis Stevenson.
I've only texted with him, so I couldn't tell you.
Probably just Travis.
Travis, but Travis, Travis.
Let's go Travis. Travis Stevenson, a 6'1" corner, and I said he was committed to Georgia Tech. Where in the world are we talking about for him?
Well, he's out of Georgia, and he committed to Georgia Tech pretty early. I mean, it was earlier this spring, but look, he's got the Texas visit this weekend. He visited Florida State last weekend. He's got Auburn after Texas. Then he's got Georgia, and then Georgia Tech is sandwiched in there on the 13th. So his stock has really picked up, with all due respect to Georgia Tech. When Texas offered him, I mean, he and I were texting, and I said, "You up for an interview?" He said, "Well, yeah, but can you text me some questions?" So I said, "Sure." And I asked him about Texas and any interest. And he goes, "Dude, it's Texas." He goes, "Of course I have an interest in Texas." And he said at that point he wanted to get down to Austin for a visit. So that's going to happen this weekend. Still kind of new. This one is, we're still kind of, personally, I'm still kind of getting a feel on where, how solid is he to Georgia Tech. He's taking all these other visits. But you got to think, if he's a kid from Georgia, he's committed to Georgia Tech, but Georgia wants him, Georgia Tech may have a hard time. If Texas wants you, if Auburn wants you. I think Texas and Auburn could probably flip him if they really wanted to. But Georgia, you'd think he would have a real good shot. So, Texas is in the mix here. Obviously, right off the bat, he said, "Yeah, of course I have an interest in Texas. Who wouldn't?" But, where do things stand coming into this weekend? I don't really have a clear read on it, Chad. That'll be something I'll have to talk to him about on his way home on Sunday, and just say, okay, now that you've seen Texas, what does this do for your Georgia Tech commitment? What does it mean for these other visits you have coming up?
Hey, one weird ace in the hole for Texas, Jason, could be, if you're a Georgia kid, you're ready to go to Georgia Tech, that means you can deal with the heat. Texas isn't even that humid. I mean, come on. The weather may improve a little bit in Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah, if it's anything like it was, the last week or so, maybe you get some 80-degree temperatures in there for this visit. Yeah.
Come on, humidity gods. Let's maybe show Travis Stevenson something good there. All right, there's your list. And if you want to, again, reference all of this again, feel free to hit orangebloods.com. The 321 article from last week had this list, but Jason's going to have this updated information out there for you. Check out orangebloods.com. As we get into the weekend, Jason's going to have all the info for you of who's in town. Was there maybe a late breaking situation where, heck, we're in this time of year, late May into now early June. Weather can mess with stuff sometimes. Sometimes flights get, delayed and or canceled. The very latest info is at orangebloods.com for you. All right, Jason, we went through the list. Anything else we need to hit before we wrap up?
No, just know that it's going to be a busy and active weekend on Orange Bloods. So just keep your eyes tuned to our message board, our front page. We'll have updates throughout the weekend. And certainly after these visits conclude, we'll have updates on all these guys and see how things go.
And then make sure you're back here next week Wednesday premiering at 10 a.m. for the recruiting hour, because if it's possible, these recruiting weekends may get bigger and bigger, and they may have some turn times, and they may have some Ojos, and they may have a KJ Edwards, and all of that stuff.
We may have to limit the talking point for each guy to like 30 seconds. Otherwise, these shows are going to be like 2 hours long. Because
next 2 weeks, I'm bringing a stopwatch.
Yeah, you can be my Jeff Banks. I'm like,
yeah, exactly. I'm gonna put the stopwatch on you like you're Trot O'Neill. Come on, Jason. Let's go. Let's get through these guys. That's coming up next week. Again, recruiting hour premieres Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Shout out to Longhorn Wealth Management Group. Again, the presenting sponsor. Thanks to all of you for checking it out. First big weekend in June is here. Texas bringing them in. OrangeBloods.com has all the latest for you. We'll talk to you next week on the recruiting hour. This is Orange Bloods Live. See ya.